What's up everyone, Zero here. So I want to try something a little bit different with this video, and I'm just going to watch a VOD in the background while I talk. The main purpose of this video is just to provide my thoughts and some feedback to Blizzard on Season 8. I want to preface this by saying I do not hate this game. In fact, I want to see this game succeed just as much as I want to see any other game that I enjoy succeed. So let's start with the season mechanic. Now, I know for a fact that these developers are very, very capable of creating a very good season because we've seen them do it before. Season 2 is really, really fun. But the problem is that they found a formula that works, and now they're afraid to step outside of the box. At least that's what it feels like. Every single season is just powers. And you go into an area, you kill a bunch of mobs, you level up your powers. It's the same exact thing. We've been doing this for like the last 6 seasons, it feels like. The first season, even though it wasn't that big of a hit, was still kind of cool. They had like a different mechanic. You socket these things in your items. They give you a certain power. Very cool mechanic, even though it just ended up being the season of the barber. Take Path of Exile 1, for example. Every single one of the endgame mechanics in Path of Exile 1 came from a league. So everything, Delve, Blight, Legion, all of that stuff, as far as I know, came from League mechanics. I would really encourage Blizzard to step out of the powers box and try some new stuff. Look, if it's not a hit, you can't get any worse than the feedback you're already getting. Like, a lot of people are really unhappy with this season, and I think that if they just took a chance, I think it would be wildly successful. The second thing I want to touch on is the skill tree. The skill tree has to be changed, like 100%. If you take a look at the max roll tier list, it's the exact same tier list for like the last few leagues. It's still Lightning Spear Sork, Dance of Knives Rogue, Death Trap Rogue. These builds are so meta that it almost doesn't even make sense to play anything else. Like, I did my best to try, before they did the stat squish, I did my best to try to make some off meta builds, and they were okay, but they definitely weren't pushing the pit. And that's really the only end game mechanic that we have, is like the pit, and then you have bosses, and you have nightmare dungeons, and now you have the Undercity and stuff like that. But it's really just all kind of samey feeling. This has to happen. They have to change the skill tree. Give us more options to change the way that the skills fundamentally work. Now, I know that they've been trying to do that with the items. I'm going to touch on that in a second. But I really wish that they would venture out and just give us multiple options for each skill. Like, the skill has a main box, and then it branches out and branches off to 2. What they can do is just create 2 more branches this way and 2 more branches that way. So that would give us 8 more choices for each skill. And they could do crazy stuff like convert the elements or change the way that the skill fundamentally works when you're casting it or using it. Something. Like, there are certain skills in this game where it's literally like, do 10% more burning damage or do 10% more fire damage. Those are your only 2 options for the skill. And it's so limiting. It's very, very limiting. Like, I was looking around at some of the builds that people were putting together, and it just does not make any sense to do anything else other than play this, because I'm not going to be able to get into tier 4 with anything else with the way that they changed the difficulty. Now, I want to step outside of the box for a second and maybe give some feedback that might be considered a hot take. I feel like making greater affixes on items just makes every other legendary you pick up feel absolutely useless. Like, even if you're searching for max aspects, you know that you're not going to get one that's max if it's not on a greater affix. So getting anything that is not a GA is just trash. So it trivializes all the other loot that you find. I really wish that they would just get rid of that system. The tempering and masterworking, I really feel is like a horrible system, but I really feel like that's not going to go anywhere. So I'm not even going to bother giving feedback on that. I feel like it's one of the worst crafting systems I've ever seen, to be honest with you. It's so annoying. There's no way to deterministically do anything. It's all just RNG. You can spam the same exact dash does extra damage over and over and over again and just waste all your tempering chances. It just doesn't feel great. But what I wish they would do with the item is make rare items usable like they did in Diablo 2. They have the winning formula for this. I don't understand why they're scared to implement it. Bring back real rune words, not this generator spender. These are not rune words, what we have right now. They're not. They barely ever proc. They're annoying. It's just a really dumb implementation of rune words. What I wish they would do is just bring back the exact same rune words that we had in Diablo 2. That way, you could get a rare item that's got some really good stats on it, sock it in the certain runes sequentially, and then create a really badass item out of it. I think that would be a absolute game changer for Diablo 4. I wish that they would get rid of these legendary aspects. If there is a skill that they want to change via item, I really wish that they would just put it on a unique item. Like for instance, the Dancing Knives one, where it says Dance of Knives does X amount of damage and then it gains extra charges or whatever the aspect says. I wish that they would just put that on a unique item. Give it its own specific stats and then just take out all these legendary aspects. Because having your build just revolve around all legendary aspects kind of feels bad. And then you couple those uniques with some rune words and you have a little bit of wiggle room as far as build diversity goes. You couple that also with the skill tree, and now we're talking. Now we have a real ARPG. Not saying that this isn't a real ARPG, but you know what I mean. The last thing I'm going to touch on is hopping directly into the end game. I think that is doing more damage than it is doing good. I really feel like in other games, like you have to go through somewhat of the campaign. Like give Last Epoch, for example. You have to go through the campaign, but they give you an option to skip it. And you have certain fights within the campaign that are like a skill and gear check. And I think that is what Diablo's missing, because you just hop right in and start blasting Hell Tides or blasting this League mechanic. And then you just increase the difficulty a little bit as you level up, but you're pretty much instantly in the end game. So maybe what they could do is with each season mechanic is they could create like a seasonal journey that does not allow you to access the end game mechanics until you complete it, and make it like a miniature campaign. Now I know people might push back on that a little bit, but I really feel like Path of Exile and Last Epoch, they do that right. Like you have to go through the campaign, but you hit these little parts in there where it's like, okay, I did this, now I can progress. And that's kind of the feeling you get. Instead of just hopping right into like all the mechanics. It just doesn't feel good. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on it. If you guys like the video, please consider subscribing, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.